We're the largest independent family-owned real estate company in the United States.
So almost 10% of Indiana realtors are associated with
brand.
Tucker? No way.
So we're really in a unique position from an economic standpoint to see massive growth.
Like, what gets you the most excited about the potential of Tucker Real Estate? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. Big news from my friends over at Hope Plumbing. Now Hope Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. You heard that right. They are now your one-stop shop for home services, offering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. New name, added services, but same trustworthy, loyal company. They treat your home like their very own, and now that includes HVAC as well. Book your next home services appointment with Hope and mention Get Indiana, and Hope will give you a free membership for a year. A membership includes important services like whole home plumbing inspection, a free mainline drain snaking, 2 seasonal HVAC inspections, and so much more. That's a deal you can't miss out on. Call Hope Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling and start saving today. Now let's get back into the show. Today I'm joined by Andy Rudolph, the Vice President of Franchise Operations for the F.C.Tucker Company. With over 20 years of experience in real estate and a background in engineering and construction, Andy has served as the president of the Indiana Association of Realtors in 2022, and in 2018 was named the SIAR Realtor of the Year. His leadership in Indiana's real estate market has helped shape its growth and development. Today, we're going to be talking about the history of the F.C.Tucker brand, the growth of the brand throughout the past long amount of time. We're going to get into all the details there, and the future of Indiana real estate. Andy, welcome to Get In.
Thank you very much, Nate. Proud to be here.
Dude, I am really excited about this one. I've said it like 10 times. So, F.C.Tucker was an alumni of DePaul University and a member of the Delta Tau Delta fraternity.
That's
so
crazy.
I'm trying to live up to big shoes of these accomplished alumni. And the guys from One Taylor Place in Greencastle are going to be super pumped to hear this one. Awesome. Thank you for coming on and talking about it. There were just some amazing stats that we've shared that we'll get into a little bit later in the show about the amount, pure volume real estate that Tucker Company does here in Indiana. I think there was, the word billion was tossed around. So I'm excited to get into that. But before we talk about the amazing impact around Indiana that you're making today, we're gonna have to start from the beginning and talk about how F.C.Tucker got into the real estate game.
Yeah, sure. So we started in 1917, so over 100 years old. At the time, Fred Tucker the First, Fred Sr., as we refer to him, he was starting out just as an independent operator with a few agents. He was working in the Indianapolis area, and generationally, he's handed it down several different times. So he started the company itself in 1917. Fred Tucker II, also known as Bud Tucker, was involved after that. And then finally in 1986, Fred Tucker III, along with Dave Goodrich and Jim Litton, took over the company at that point, and that's where we saw some real growth beginning to happen, right? So there was significant growth between 1917 and 1986, but then after 1986, the actual brand really took off. We found our sweet spot in residential real estate, and expansion started to grow from there.
Which Tucker was it that went to DePaul?
Bud Tucker, so probably the second. You may have to do that research and have them plug it in first.
I know, I'm gonna have to look that up because I'm like,
but there are 3 of them.
Yeah, Bud Tucker, class of 1940.
Yeah,
that lines up there. Okay,
right.
And so it's been passed down 3 times.
Yep, family owned still to this day. We're the largest independent in the state of Indiana. We're also the largest brokerage in the state of Indiana.
Well, when you say independent, what do you mean by
independent? Meaning we're family owned, so we're not a corporate traded on Wall Street type stock, right? Okay. We're part of an independent brand. We are part of the Howard Hanna family of companies as well, which is also a family owned operation, and we're the largest, with being part of Hanna Holdings, we're the largest independent family owned real estate company in the United States. So part of 15,000 agents strong. Really proud to be part of that organization. It's really great.
So how many real estate agents are a part of Tucker? 15,000?
Yeah. So we have about 1,200 in central Indiana as part of the F.C.Tucker Company. We've got another 500 or so that are part of the rest of our network around the state. So outside of central Indiana, we also have franchise operations, and they go all the way from Fort Wayne to Evansville, Valparaiso to Madison, right? So we have the central Indiana covered by our franchise or by our company-owned stores. And then we have franchise operations that hit all of those other areas outside of that footprint, but they're all part of our Tucker family, right?
And so this started with Bud Tucker as like an agent back in the day, just like slinging houses.
Slinging real estate.
In central Indiana?
Yep.
And then just by growing up and getting more people and just building up the business over time?
Yep. And part of it is growth based off of the culture that we developed. So each of the Tucker family members and Jim Litton and Dave Goodrich and those have developed such a culture around us that we had more and more people wanting to get into that. So in the 80s, as we were expanding and growing in central Indiana, they had a lot of knocks on the door that said, hey, what is working for you here that we could do other places? Like, if in Evansville, we want to use the same formulas and stuff we did. So at the time, Jim Litton, who is one of our owners, got in his car and drove up to Chicago, to where there's the National Association of Realtors offices and library. And so he sat down in the library and he just started looking up franchising because he's like, I don't know that I could fully develop systems just like we have in Indianapolis for Evansville or Lafayette or Fort Wayne. So he did a whole bunch of research trying to figure it out, right? And he came back with a plan, and that began our franchising adventures in about 1990. And now we've got 29 office locations throughout the rest of the state that are all independently owned and operated franchise partners of our F.C.Tucker Company.
And that's what you oversee, right?
That's
is
what I
franchising operations. And so, I mean, in the time that you've been there, and isn't that how you kind of got into Tucker in the first place?
Yeah.
On the receiving end of kind of like brought into the family?
Yeah, I was kind of brought in. That's a good way to put it. I was back up just a little bit. So I was born in a real estate family. My dad was in it, and growing up, I'd see him put on that 3-piece suit and we'd go to church on Sunday, and then he would disappear and just go off working. And I was like, oh, the one thing I don't want to do is be a realtor because that part looks awful. So growing up, I said, well, I just want to do something different. So I went to Purdue. I studied engineering, got out of that, had a really awesome internship with Walt Disney, where I was working with their engineering department called Imagineering. I did that for 3 to 4 months and then moved out to Boston, doing anything I could do to stay away from Indiana, because that's what young kids think. They think they need to get out and go see what else is out there. But then they go off and they say, oh, hey, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And so when I was living in Boston, I was like, man, I want to get back to Indiana. Like, that's where my roots are. I need to get my roots back in that southern Indiana soil.
Hey, there you go.
So I moved back, and I was working at a pizza place in Evansville called Taroni's. And I was kind of working on weekends.
Wait, so you went from interning at Walt Disney. What were you doing in Boston?
I was working for a consulting firm. I did design work I did the paging system for Miami International Airport. I did Arena's sound and video systems for.
And you're a Purdue engineering grad, right?
Purdue engineering grad, yeah.
And then you find yourself back in Evansville slinging pizza.
I was back in Evansville slinging pizza because I loved Indiana, and I wanted to be back home. And my high school sweetheart was here. So there's, the truth comes out.
There it is.
But the one thing I knew was, I tried engineering. It wasn't necessarily my fit. I didn't like living outside of Indiana. I wanted to come back and do something else. But I wasn't sure what it was. And one day my dad said, hey, man, if you go get your real estate license, I'll pay you a commission on this flip house I'm working over here, and I'll sell it to you at my cost. And I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good. So I went and got my real estate license.
How did you just go get, was it hard?
It's not really tough. Really, Indiana has pretty easy laws in place, right? We're a controlled license, which means you have to do a 90-hour course. You got to take a state exam and pass and complete those with 70% or higher.
Like 90 hours. I could probably go get licensed in like 2 weeks.
I saw somebody do it once in 3 days. God bless Nikki. I don't know how she slept. But she
3 days?
Yeah. Yep.
Holy smokes. Okay, that's intense.
Yeah. So I wouldn't suggest that for most people. It's about an 8-10 week course, something like that, unless you do an intensive. But that allows you to get a license. But getting a license doesn't mean you're going to be successful in this, right? So
no,
part of it means
because that was like a COVID thing, right? Like everyone and their brother, I felt like, got licensed.
It looked like we went to record high numbers, 22,000 realtors in the state of Indiana at its peak. And they're still pretty high in those same amount of numbers, but we only have so many transactions to go around, so much housing that's there. The business is able to make any kind of wage and lifestyle that you want out of it. So that's a lot of the attraction that real estate always brings. But what people don't see is the hard work that has to go in behind the scenes to be able to generate those leads, to be able to bring in the people, and have folks to be able to represent as either buyers or sellers. So.
And so you started through the flip house. And I remember you telling me about before we started recording, right? Was it the dirt floor or something?
Oh, yeah. My first listing I sold was a 1-bedroom house, and the back room of it could have been a second bedroom, but they didn't have any floor in it because the people kept chickens inside. So you see everything from the worst to the best. And when I got done selling that house, there was the seller came to me who was an absentee owner, and he just goes, "Okay, now if you can sell that house, you can sell any house in the state." And it was right.
And so then you started to get into the family business after not really wanting to explore that.
He kind of tricked me into it, is the way to look at it. But my dad was an independent brokerage as well. So, right, in Indiana, if you are a licensed broker, you can have agents that work for you, and you can develop your own brand, your own marketing, that kind of stuff. I come from a small town in southwest Indiana called Wadesville, somewhere between Evansville and New Harmony, and I still live down there. Love the place. You know, he had his own brokerage, and for the longest time, I worked one-on-one with my dad. So I learned the business there. When he was ready to retire, you know, I took over that brokerage from him. But I remember one day, and I always tell this as the printer broke story. One day, the printer broke, and I couldn't print out the payroll for my one non-1099 employee to take it to the accountant's office to do it. And I was just fed, and I needed to go get Pinewood Derby car kits for my kid. And so that was my breaking point day. That was the day that I knew that I didn't want to do this alone. I wanted to do it as part of a bigger team. So I had great relationships with the owner of the F.C.Tucker franchise in Evansville, and I called them up and said, "Hey, you know, I think it's time for me to do something bigger than just the small brokerage that we had together." And so we merged my family's real estate brokerage with their brokerage, and I became a manager for their operation in downtown Evansville. And I did that for about 10 additional years after that. So really enjoyed it. It gave me a bigger picture of what real estate looks like, right?
Because it goes from like running a small business, right? Like, I don't know, what was if you said like transaction, like how many houses were you guys selling a year with your family owned?
Yeah, probably in the range of 30 to 50, maybe 100 on a good year. My dad did a lot of real estate development, right? So he did a lot of small subdivisions. We did new home construction. We did this. I always call my dad the Forrest Gump of real estate, right? He would just kind of fall into different things and be able to work it out, figure out how to make a dime. So he was real fortunate to be able to follow in his footsteps as that. But when I started with the Tucker Company in Evansville, which was called F.C.Tucker Imge and still is to this day, you know, I learned a little bit more about what organized real estate looks like, right? So we were able to make a good living on that. It raised me, you know, so it wasn't all bad. But I got to see what the bigger side of that is. So scale starts to help out in that way.
What are the challenges that these independent family-owned brokerage? What kind of challenges are they facing versus the challenges that come with scale?
Yeah. So if you look at it, I mean, there's so much demand by consumers today on things like internet tools and website, email, all that kind of stuff that as an independent owner, I was having to figure out on my own. Right. So I would have to come in and if the coffee needs made that morning, I'm making the coffee. You know, rent needs to get paid, I'm getting paid. And interestingly enough, and a lot of people don't understand this, but brokers in Indiana, so real estate agents, are independent contractors. We're not employees. So you're not an employee of the brokerage you're with. You're partnering with them to supply services to you. Nate, when you go out, you decide you want to work with the next buyer's agent to be able to work with. They're not receiving a check from the company that they work with, right? We're all independent contractors. We all get 1099s at the end of the year. But the brokerage you affiliate with is the place where you get your tools and your support. So the brokerage takes a small cut of the amount of money that is brought in by the agent, but in return, they get all of the rest of this stuff so that they can focus on client interaction as opposed to all of the rest of the business stuff. So it's kind of a unique arena to be in. No other business that I'm aware of goes fully straight commission.
Yeah, and that is due to the success of it, right? It's like anyone can probably like
anything
sign
out
up.
of it you want.
Yeah, you can be really, really good, or you could sell, just like your friend, one house a year or whatever. Yeah. But you have to be, if I remember right, you have to be under a brokerage, right? Like if I just went out and
you get your license today, you have to wait 2 years before you can have your own brokerage. To be a managing broker, you've had to have been in business for at least 2 years. You have to take those state exams again. The barrier is not really difficult. And we used to have across the state thousands and thousands of brokerages. Over time, those have kind of consolidated because what people have found is that, hey, if we get under a larger umbrella, a lot of the hassle stuff kind of goes away. So if you're an independent broker owner, you've got 10 agents and you're working in Muncie and you are trying to do all of that stuff for all of your agents, make sure they have all that full support. That's where like a franchise operation comes into handy, right? We can take a lot off the shoulders of the owner and take a lot of those things away and make them be more productive in the things that they can do to support their agents, and the agents therefore supporting their clients. So,
yeah, and it goes from being part of this bigger team. And yeah, you say not having to worry about running payroll or all the headaches that can come along. And you can focus more on supporting, getting more leads, selling more houses.
And what we find is to be people that make great success of being in this business have an entrepreneurial spirit in the first place, right? They're trying to figure out the way that they want to be able to work, to be able to support their lifestyle, to work best inside of their family, to be able to do those things. So they come in with creative spirits. So it's really energizing to work with the agents every day because they're always coming up with great ideas, and they're the real secret sauce. They're what makes a company like the F.C.Tucker Company great, is because we have some of the best agents across the state, real professionals that are working hard to help support their clients.
And how many agents do you guys have?
We have about 1,200 or so in the F.C.Tucker Company. We've got another 400-ish in the franchise operations group.
And so those are separate?
Those are separate, but we consider them all family, right? Because they're all part of us. They are separate businesses, but they're really part of our Tucker family. So looking at that overall, yeah, I mean, we're up there around 9% of all licensees in the state of Indiana are supporting their Tucker.
9%?
Yep.
So almost 10% of Indiana realtors are associated with Tucker?
Yep.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said, I mean, you had this crazy stat of like how many real estate transactions touch Tucker?
Yeah. So last year in the state of Indiana, just talking about residential real estate, there was about 88,000 residential real estate transactions, and that totaled about $22 billion in residential sales.
In total, in 2024, there was $22 billion worth of real estate sold.
Yep. And just residential. And out of that, about 5 million of it was under the F.C.Tucker brand. We make up a large percentage of those things. Again, we have the most.
Wait, 5 million?
5 billion.
Oh, wait.
With a B.
So 5 billion of the $22 billion of Indiana real estate sold in 2024 was attributed to Tucker.
Had a Tucker agent sitting at the table with them.
That's like it's almost 25%.
Yeah,
Not
it's really
quite.
Great. You have to, though, there's a little bit of weird math that goes along in real estate sales compilations where you have to cut that in half. It's closer to about 12%.
Oh, because is it a sale
so
and
it's a sale and a purchase, right? So you have to do a little bit of working there to make sure that math works.
Okay.
But in $22 billion worth of real estate changing hands, we made up a strong position inside of the market.
That is wild.
Yeah, it is kind of neat. And if you look back, it's been really fun to watch over the last couple of years because we had some interesting years of real estate, to say the least, right? In my lifetime, this was the wildest ride. Our owner, Jim Litton, always likes to say, well, that was Disneyland during 21 and 22 because it kind of felt like everybody was out there. But I will say, as an agent, it was really, really tough during those years. So even when people said, oh, the market's crazy, you guys are doing great, it also meant that we had, 15 offers at a time, and I could make one happy call to one client, and I had to make 14 sad calls to others.
And are you still like out and about, like selling homes and showing homes and doing that?
So I did that for the first portion of my career. Whenever I took on this role, I stepped out of the buying and selling arena because I wanted to be able to support my clients in a better way. So I refer them to agents that are inside of our system now. They still get taken care of very well. But I spend my time on the road. I'm out doing trainings. I'm out doing recruitment, finding us new franchise partners, and just generally supporting our brand everywhere.
Because that is a big issue, not an issue, but a problem to solve is integrating these teams, right? It's like and I think most recently you guys just merged with a huge brand out of Lafayette, the Shook Realty, right?
Yep.
And I mean, they're a pretty legacy brand in the area, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they've been around for 100 years as well.
And so you think about 100 years of systems, processes, name, brand, all that stuff. You want to honor and like can maintain that legacy, but you also have like ways and reasons that like, you know, you guys are doing $5 billion of transactions a year.
Sure.
How do you balance that?
Yeah, so we want to do it with true honor to the partners that we come with, right? Some brokerages or some brands look to go out and just partner with somebody who's willing. And that's not necessarily our mantra, right? We look for partners that look like us, that have the same corporate culture as us, that are full service brokerages, right?
What does that mean?
Really do. So full service brokerage means that we're in it for every aspect of the transaction. If you come to me and say, hey, I want to buy, I can say, well, I not only will help you do the preliminary search, we've got title, we have access to insurance, we have access to mortgage services through Howard Hanna Mortgage. We can help service you in all aspects of it. So we're a one-stop shop as opposed to somebody who might be out doing another model where it is we do the brokerage and we partner with other things in the group. We have all of those aspects underneath our umbrella with Hanna Holdings and F.C.Tucker Company.
I had a conversation the other day with a mortgage company, right? And it's like, you go to a realtor, you know that they're going to refer you like one or two of their friends who are doing it. And so it's like having someone that their incentives are aligned and they're upfront about that, where it's like, hey, this is our mortgage partner, this is our title partner, this is this. Like, I don't know. I think that just makes sense.
And by no means are they obligated to do that, right? But we want them to have that opportunity. So that's where that full service part comes in. We're not discount. We're not going to come through and say, oh, well, we do this, but we don't do that for you. No, we market ourselves as a guide through the entirety of the transaction and every aspect that can be there. And I think that's been successful. We've known that it was successful for that. That's how we're here for 100 years. And some other models that haven't been around as long, have to prove their time and catch up with us after 100 years worth of service.
When you're like price shopping or just considering real estate, how do you make decisions as the consumer who's selling a house?
Yep.
How do you choose, and what are the things that people choose when listing a house or choosing someone to list their house for them?
I think the most important thing for a consumer to do is to interview folks, right? Have them come into your house, have them look around. I say that whenever I was in the selling space, I spent as many nights at other people's dining room tables as I did at my own, right? Because that's where the real magic is made. You have to have someone who you have a connection with, that you have a understanding and a truth that they're guiding you in the right way. So my first recommendation is to interview somebody, right? So talk to your friends or your family, get the name of some folks that do it and bring them in and have them tell you why they should choose you. We're a service industry. Really are. I always use it. We're closer to attorneys or doctors than we are to other things because they always call it the practice of medicine and the practice of law. Well, this is the practice of real estate. And that's how you learn it, right? We're not selling anything. I always hate calling it the real estate industry because that implies that there's a factory over here with smokestacks and we're building widgets and that kind of stuff. We don't build anything. Realtors don't build anything. What we're selling is us, our service, our integrity, all of the things that go along with that, right? So when I say what should a seller look for is sit down across the table from people and interview them and ask them, what's important to them? What should they be considering whenever they work on it? What tools is that agent going to use to be able to get you top dollar for your property?
Yeah. Well, and like on the buying side, it's like you are a guide through people's biggest transaction of their lifetime.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, it's the largest financial asset that some people have outside of their retirement funds, right? So it's the single largest asset, and we want to help you protect.
That could also get like blown down or like, leak. It's like if your retirement fund was leaking, like that's one issue, but it's like you buy this thing, you put up all this money, and you're like, oh, now like my furnace can go out or whatever.
And I will tell you the best option that you have is when you work with a good real estate agent, is to stay with that real estate agent the same way as you would with a really good doctor or with a really good lawyer, right? Because there's so many times that I had customers call me and be like, hey, you helped us buy this house 10 years ago, but I need an electrician. I got it. I don't know how to do a lot of things, Nate, but I do know a lot of people. And that's the secret sauce to real estate.
Yes, I have a guy for that.
I have a guy for that.
Like, I may not know how to do it, but I have a guy for that. Yeah, the Rolodex of real estate agents is crazy. And it's like even random stuff that like don't have anything to do with houses. Oh, you need an underwater basket weaver? Like, I actually sold him his aunt's house back in 2017. Like, I know an underwater basket weaver for sure. And so as you guys are going out and brands are considering franchising with you guys, how do you know that that's a good marriage there?
Yeah. So normally what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a broker owner that shares the same general culture inside of their brokerage as what we have, because then that transition is going to be a lot easier, right? So if they have the same ethics, the same moral compass as we do, it makes it really easy to be able to say, hey, this is something where we can help you out. We're not making a massive change to your business, but we're giving you a whole lot of support systems because it can be lonely. Being a small broker, independent broker owner, I did that, right? It was me and my dad. If I didn't have my dad to show me what it was I should be doing there and came up in it generationally, it would have been really hard for me to be able to figure out what to do. And what I see now is whenever I go out and work with smaller or even mid-sized brokerages, a lot of them don't have an exit strategy maybe for when they want to retire. So they have an asset here that is a brokerage. Sometimes we can partner with them and a young person inside of their office that wants to keep it going, and we can work through things that way. So it gives legacy owners a lot of opportunity to have a saleable market. Right. So they have an asset that they can go out and do something with.
When you think about, the expansion, I mean, you guys have been doing this for a very long time, and to still be like hungry and growing, like what gets you the most excited about the potential of Tucker Real Estate?
I think whenever we meet with a partner, regardless of what the transaction looks like, right? So we meet with a broker owner and we start to hear a little bit about what they need, and we start to show them the tools that we have already developed. Because when you're the scale and size that we are, we have buying power for various technologies and tools that others wouldn't. But a lot of times it just means we just know this position that they've been in, right? And so we know what it is that they might benefit from, and so we show that to them. And when their eyes kind of light up and they're like, that's the thing that I've been missing. You kind of see that in their face. But the conversation never goes the direction that you think it will be in the onset. So in the onset, we were meeting. You talked a little bit about our acquisition there of the Shook Realty Group in Lafayette. I mean, that started with me working with our current franchise owner there. We had a franchise there for 30 years, run by Lou Johnson. Lou is fantastic, a big-time agent in her own right at the time when she was still selling, but she was looking for an exit strategy. So we were shopping around looking for various partners, and every time I would talk to Lou and I'd say, "Hey, Lou, who else in the real estate market would you like to see us bring in and help take over your legacy ownership?" She goes, "I really think it needs to be Charlie Shook in the Shook Agency." And so I said, "Well, I guess we will see if they're open to that opportunity." So Charlie called us. We came in, we sat down and started to talk. And then he finally said, "Oh, no, really, we might be open to the opportunity of joining the Tucker Company as well." So we wanted to honor their legacy and this as well. So we combined our franchise operation along with the Shook Realty Group into our first Metro Indianapolis office that's outside of Indianapolis up in Lafayette. So that is
when
now
you
a
say
corporate-owned store.
so it's a corporate-owned store, so not a
store.
franchise.
Yeah, not franchise. So we start down that path. But what we really do is we want to look at the agents that are there and the ownership that's in place there and say what's best for them. And in this case, their ownership said what's best for us is for us to be a corporate-owned store.
Why would that make it better?
They had been in business with family. They saw the opportunities of the things that we were able to put together, and so they felt comfortable carrying on their legacy of a family-owned operation by going to another family-owned operation. And so this made for a good exit. And like I said before, our cultures aligned. So it made it very easy to go in, but we're trying to honor all of their legacy. So the name of the operation in Lafayette is now F.C.Tucker Shook. We are including their family's legacy in even the naming of the thing because the Shook name in Lafayette super, super strong, right? A lot of years of real estate, a lot of transactions, and we wanted to honor their family as well. So the operation in Lafayette, while being a corporate-owned store, is identified as F.C.Tucker Shook, which makes me really proud.
Yeah, when you talk about like well-known names, having the Shook name around Lafayette is amazing, but the Tucker name around the state of Indiana and Talk to Tucker.
Yep.
What's the history behind that? Who was the first person to put that on a sign?
The Talk to Tucker slogan came up in the 60s.
No
right?
way.
And it was just kind of a mantra. And then the next thing you know, it kind of takes off. And we've really leaned into it over time. As a matter of fact, that's what you see on the signs, right? It doesn't even say FC Tucker on it. It says Talk to Tucker real big at the top of it. So it's been something that we've been really proud of. We lean into. It's so well known around the state.
Yeah, and it's not very often that like a marketing campaign or like a slogan like this is going on 80 years. Holy smokes! Since the 60s, so 60 years. And public math.
And it uses that synergy operation, and it doesn't mean that you need to come to the Tucker Company in Indianapolis, but you can come to any Tucker branded operation because we share those same sensibilities. So it really is something that we're proud of. And the guy who had done my job in this franchising operation, kudos to him. He did it for nearly 30 years and set us up for a great base around the state in all of these various locations.
I do wonder who was like in that marketing, if they even called it a marketing meeting, but like back in the 60s, and it's like, you know what? We should just put like one sign that says Talk to Tucker
and see what happens.
And then like, 60 years down the road, it's everywhere on every single one of the signs. And it's like one of the most like recognizable slogans of Indiana business.
Oh yeah.
So you are from Evansville,
Yep.
and it's not very often that we get someone from Evansville to come up and be on the podcast, which I'm super, super grateful for. One thing about the past few years that Evansville has never been more connected to Indiana and Indianapolis than it is currently, right?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about, was it the 69?
Yeah, I-69.
The I-69 corridor is finally complete. You can now whip back and forth between Evansville and Indianapolis quicker than you ever have before.
And you can really tell it in the Evansville community, right? Whenever I was growing up, there was no great way to get to Indianapolis. I used to tell everybody, I'm like, well, we're in Indiana, but it's easier for me to get to St. Louis or Louisville or even Nashville than it is to get to Indianapolis because there was a kind of a pain. And a lot of the studies before I-69 was done said, well, it may save Evansville commuters 15 to 20 minutes. I will tell you, it's way better than that now.
Wait, so what did it used to be? How long did it used to take to get from Indianapolis to Evansville?
I always considered to get to downtown Indianapolis from my house in Evansville took about 4 hours.
You lose an hour? Are you in a different time zone?
We're in the central time. We're on slow time too, so it makes it real difficult to make it for me to morning meetings because
you're 5 hours, right? That's like a 5-hour trip.
Right. But once 69 is complete, I can get here now parked in downtown because I had a meeting at Monument Circle yesterday. So from my house to downtown, parked at the State House, I was 2 hours and 45 minutes. So
from
really,
4 hours to 2:45.
2:45. Yeah, it's crazy how much more connected it makes it. So now there's all of this mentality that used to be in the Evansville market was, well, we're going to do, our MSA, our metropolitan service area, meant we were probably going to go for services to Louisville or to St. Louis. Now with the opening of that, it gives access easier to the capital, which is really awesome.
And you're like basically, minus a few years in there, a lifelong Evansville resident.
Yeah.
And you used to feel more connected to St. Louis or Louisville or Nashville than Indianapolis?
Absolutely. Even though I was Hoosier proud, right? It was hard to get to Lafayette whenever I was going to college at Purdue. Right. So you went straight up 41 and you went through all the stoplights that are part of that. Now I-69 connects us. And if you look at the state of Indiana in general, now we have this wonderful web that goes across the northern part, the southern part with I-64 and 70, right? And then you have this giant X that crosses the center of the state, 69 from one corner to the other, and 65 from the other corner. So we're really in a unique position from an economic standpoint to see massive growth.
Well, you were telling me an interesting fact when we talked maybe a few weeks back that Evansville is like a logistics hub or something to do with defense mechanisms. Yep. I don't know what they are.
So one of the largest inland ports in the United States is found in Mount Vernon, Indiana. which is right down as far south and west as you can go in the state.
Is that Mount Vernon? That's Posey County, correct?
Posey County.
Yeah,
That's
come
Posey
on.
County. Down at that port, one of the companies that's down there is BWX Technologies. BWX does welding for nuclear reactors for submarines, amongst other things. So a lot of that is government contract, defense things. Because of the access they have, it's railway access, the access via the interstate system, and the port itself to be able to take those reactors once they're done down the Mississippi all the way to the Gulf to exit. So there's defensive strategy stuff that happens inside of Indiana that you wouldn't predict is in Indiana, right? It's just like kind of Crane is a hidden resource there in Indiana. So we have access to things that are like that. But I think that the growth that you see, say, if you leave Indianapolis in your studio today and you drive to Chicago, right? The connection that has been made across I-65 and the growth that's happened between, say, Lafayette and Indianapolis is all a result of our wonderful roadway system that we have. And those growth means jobs mean income and money, means better living for those residents here in the Hoosier State. So we're seeing great growth all across the state as a result of those things.
Hey Hoosiers, let me tell you about Keller & Keller, a respected Indiana-based law firm that's here for all of us, from Evansville up to South Bend. They've been serving Hoosiers since 1936, and they really know what it means to fight for the community. These guys have recovered over $1 billion for their clients. Yes, that's billion with a B. That's a serious track record of getting results. And here's something that should really make your wallet feel good. They have a zero-fee guarantee. That means you don't pay a dime unless they win your case. Talk about peace of mind when you're hiring a lawyer. So if you've been injured here in the Hoosier State, don't hesitate to call 1-800-2-KELLER to get the support and guidance you need. They mean business. Now let's get back into the episode. Yeah, and it's the things that I don't know if the normal everyday civilian, thinks about.
Oh yeah.
It's like, this another road construction project, like crazy. Like I had Justin Burkhart from Warm Glow on, and he talks about they have their manufacturing operation in Centerville. And he talks about being able to get on 70, from loading a box into your truck to, on the road in 35 seconds. Like there are 35 seconds to go, to get onto 70 and start
on the highway.
Yeah, on the highway and start pushing it wherever they need it to go. And it's like, oh yeah, those little things add up over time, being close to transportation and connections. For those that might not have a ton of experience with Evansville, how would you describe the community, the town? What are the big industries? If you had to give a PowerPoint presentation, Evansville 101, what do people need to know about?
Well, I'm going to start off by backing it out, because I think that regional thinking in the state of Indiana has become the thing. There's a program called Ready Grants that the state legislature put in a few years ago, and those worked off of regions, not necessarily cities, because cities are starting to grow together, right? You don't know if you're in city A or city B because they start to blend as they grow in. So I want to talk more about Southwest Indiana as a thing rather than Evansville. And that could be the anchor to that. But there's so much industry in Southwest Indiana.
And where would you say the geography runs from Southwest Indiana?
I think, now, contrary to the belief of everybody in Bloomington, I don't consider that Southern Indiana. Now, it's south of the capital, right? But unless
they're
you're
going to be
against
pissed
it, I know
about
they're going
that.
to be very mad. And first off, I'm a Purdue grad, and now I'm going to say this. So while they are south, there's a whole lot that goes on beyond that. So I would say that Southwest kind of runs from DuBois County and Jasper down, say, to Cannleton, Tell City, and then over to the river in the other two directions. So that, to me, is that boundary of Southwest Indiana. And when you look at it that way, then you go, oh, what are the big industries? Well, there's a whole lot of population base, and there's a whole lot of infrastructure that's there, whether it be railroad, again, highway, interstate, that kind of stuff. So we see a lot of support things that have gone up. I grew up during the time where Toyota built a brand new plant building the Sienna minivans in Princeton, Indiana, right? And I saw how that was able to shape that community and how it grows. And it also has all these supporting businesses that come with it, right? So there's a brake plant that's there. There's a plant that just makes the doors. There's things like that that have sprouted up around it. So whenever I say Southwest Indiana, there's industry that goes all the way from furniture making to plastics industry is very, very big, with Berry Global headquartered in Evansville, various manufacturing things that take travel into respect. In Mount Vernon, we talked about Mount Vernon before. There's a really big asphalt shingle plant that's down there, right? Because they have access to oil, they have access to the materials, and they have access to the labor to be able to support it. So we've been very fortunate to have those type of industries looking at it. And I've worked with a lot of the local politicians to help bring some of those folks in. And that's another tool that realtors do in our community all the time, is that we are asked often to help court various manufacturers to come to town and stuff, because we know the market area as well as anybody else. So when they come in to help prep for shovel-ready sites, we can be instrumental and help bring those businesses in.
When you're selling southwestern Indiana to any sort of economic partner or anyone that might be bringing it, like, what's the pitch you give them?
Yeah, so we might say, hey, look, we have this demographic that's down here. We have this educational attainment. We have available workers, and they want to be inside of this community, right? So we show them all of those demographic things, but then we just show them the good things that come with us. For years, economic development always ran by, well, let's try to bring jobs in first. So we would court employers first, right? Say build a factory. But instead, we found that there's a far more effective tool, and that is making life there better, right? So you talk about parks and trails and support systems, and where does little Janie go to have swim class, and where does mom get groceries, or where does dad have his club that he wants to join, and those kind of things. So when we start to focus economic development on those kind of things, then it frees up the employer then is looking, because we already have the people that want to stay there. So very proud to say we've got a lot of employment. One of the fastest growing companies in the country right now is Nick's Manufacturing. And Nick's Manufacturing started as a little welding shop by a guy 2 generations ago in Poseyville, Indiana. And Nick's Materials now spans multiple states, employs hundreds of people, and all grew out of a really smart family saying, we want to be here and we want to be embedded in the town of Poseyville. And when you get employers that say they want to be embedded in the community that you're in, then they have a lot of respect. They're willing to give back to those communities just like we do.
And if someone was going on a weekend trip to southwestern Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say Friday morning. You're leaving from Columbia City, northern Indiana, and you're coming down to southwestern Indiana for the weekend. What's that trip got to look like? What do they need to hit up?
Long weekend. Okay. So I would start by putting some miles under my belt so that you get down to, say, French Lick, and you go to the casino in French Lick, Indiana. I think it's a really pretty community, tons of fun stuff to do there. And the Cook organization has done so much growth inside of Greene County there to better the place. I would spend a night in the... Yeah,
you're hitting Friday night in French Lick. It's a really good time. I just went down there this past summer for the Corn Ferry Golf Tour. Phenomenal time. Very great.
Cool. Then after that, I think on your second day, you want to head down towards Evansville. You want to take part in all of the things that happen in their bustling downtown. So there's some really great stuff down there. A wonderful arena, as well as...
If you haven't been to the Ford Center, it's a cool
awesome
spot.
We've hosted the OVC tournament, the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, and just last year we hosted state wrestling when there was a conflict up here. So I knew that was in your...
Thinking the NBA All-Star Weekend just takes precedent over the wrestling state finals and kicked us that. But I had a great time.
It's a fun downtown.
Pyrotechnics. They brought Ford Center really
rolled out the red carpet.
Yeah, rolled out the Southern Indiana hospitality. But that whole little downtown district right there, because there's a casino right in downtown also.
Yep, casino, some great hotels, wonderful food and dining. Indiana in general has that overall, but I think in Southwest Indiana, it's got some really cool little hip spots that are fun to hang out at.
Yeah. So one, I remember the Donut Bank.
Yes.
Like the OG one in Evansville that's legitimately a bank.
It started several years ago. The Kemp family has it. They have multiple locations now. It is really a fun place. Great family thing, but it's traditional donuts, cakes, pastries, that kind of stuff, and it's an institution in the Evansville area.
That, and then the other one that we went to, we got dinner at Comfort.
Yep.
let me tell you. Holy smokes.
Yep, Southern comfort food and a really, really cool atmosphere. It's 3 stories, so they've got different things that go on. Upstairs is fine dining. Main floor is home food. Down in the basement, they do some steaks and that kind of stuff. So a steakhouse. So
We had a really, really good time there. And then there's also a place that I hear about for food wise. So we're giving you the recommendation on your weekend trip when you're down in Evansville. Is there a pizza joint that is like very well known?
yeah, so Tironi's Pizza. I mentioned it at the beginning of this thing.
Is that the one? Or is there another one too that's like newer and like bougie pizza too?
Okay, so that is Pangea Pizza Kitchen.
Pangea.
Yes.
Yeah, because they won like Yelp, one of the top pizza places in the state of Indiana.
Crazy. So they do fantastic pizzas, but they also have chicken wings, and then they've got Asian noodle bowls and that kind of stuff. It's Pangea Kitchen, and it is really, really fantastic food and a fun owner too. So that owner has multiple locations of various restaurant styles throughout that, including a by the slice place and a really cool ramen shop, both located in downtown. So.
But then you have your place that you...
Tironi's, to me, is the institution. That's the place when I have somebody come in from out of town and I really want to show them pizza, that's the location I go to. So I go to they've got 3 different locations. Jerry Turry, who is the owner and founder of Tironi's, I got a chance to work with years ago, and he was a really fantastic guy, but their pizza
in crust we trust. Tironi's is a must. Yes.
They're right on the Main Street location, and then the Forget Me Not Inn as well, which was where
Follow the
I worked.
Pizza Brick Road. Heck yeah. I love it.
So fun.
That's the institution. All right.
So then after that, so to finish off the 3-day weekend, the other thing that I would do, which I think is a real hidden gem, is I would head over to New Harmony. And I think a lot of people overlook New Harmony. It's part of our our state parks project. So Harmony State Park is located there, but it's also one of the first settlements in the state of Indiana. So a lot of that history is still in the town of New Harmony. Really fun place to visit. They've got a lot of old structure there. Very artistic community. So a lot of little art shops and that kind of stuff. And if you go to New Harmony, you have to rent a golf cart because it's better to move around New Harmony in a golf cart. And you can kind of see all of the various sites that are down there. Really, really fun historic community to go see.
That's pretty cool. I've never heard of that. I've never been there, but I love that New Harmony is spelled with a Y and Harmony State Park is spelled I-E.
And I never understood exactly why. Somebody probably needs to do a correction and tell us.
Yeah, and figure out and do some deep dive into why it went like that. But yeah, that state park looks cool, and the Wabash Border Nature Preserve and all the stuff that they have down there. And I do think, man, when you get out there in southwestern Indiana, even starting at Bloomington, so we'll say central southwestern Indiana, the landscape just changes. And someone came on and told me, talked about like glaciers, how far the glaciers came down, and then they stopped right like just south of Indianapolis.
That's why you see the change in terrain actually that changes. Northern Indiana, central Indiana is very, very flat.
Dude, the glaciers did not take it easy on northern Indiana, let me tell you.
They flattened all of it out, but they came down, and as a matter of fact, the lowest point of the glacier activity during the last ice age is in Indiana. It's about 2 miles away from my house in Posey County. At Big Creek, there is a placard up that says this is the furthest southern spot for the glacier activity.
Wait, what? This is in where?
Wadesville or Blairsville, Indiana.
So this was the furthest, like here lies the
furthest spot. And so that's why you see that terrain change, right? So southern Indiana is very hilly whenever you get down to it. And a lot of that has to come all the way back to the glacier activity.
Wow. I think that's super fascinating. I mean, you can see it when the roads start cutting through, like, the rock beds and all the stuff, and you're just like, man. And when you get to French Lake, I always say this, like the Pete Dye course. I don't know if you've ever played it or been there. You look out and you're like, where the heck am I? Yeah. It's nuts.
It's an oasis in the middle of the state. And I think those hidden gems are what really sell folks on wanting to come to Indiana or move to Indiana. So if I meet somebody and we have someone coming in, say it's a corporate transferee that's moving from their company and they're moving from say California to Indiana, and they say, well, what is there to do here? You start pointing them towards those kind of activities and those kind of things and the diversity that happens throughout our state, and you really start to see some real successes in what they what they see.
And you guys at Tucker have your hands all across the state, right?
Yeah.
We just kind of hyped up southwestern Indiana, but I mean, you have agents and members of the Tucker family all over. Where are you seeing these hotbeds of people coming maybe into the state of Indiana or moving, relocating from one place to another across the state?
Yeah, so the Indiana migration patterns generally come, most states, the migratory patterns come from your nearby states, right? So if you look at Ohio and Illinois in particular, those two have a lot of outward migration. They're moving folks into Indiana. A lot of it's because of the tax climate. A lot of it's because of available jobs, that kind of stuff. So we see
And is it coming
migration
into where?
into Indiana.
Like,
So
is there a specific spot around the state where people are going?
Not as much. I would say that if we were looking for hotbeds of activity for growth, I think that we follow the Ohio River in southeast Indiana. So there's a lot of pressure, economic pressure in Louisville that makes the Indiana side of the river pretty easy to commute. I think we see a lot of growth there. I think we're seeing a lot of growth in the region, right? So we're seeing a lot of growth up outside of Chicago because transit's a lot easier. So opening up the rail system that we've done, that the light rail that will take commuters into Chicago, downtown Chicago from work, means that Cherville, Melville, Valparaiso, those kind of places are kind of hotbeds right now. I think the other one that I wouldn't have predicted several years ago, but comes out of economic incentives that the state has put out, is Kokomo. Kokomo has got real traction under it right now.
What do you guys see from like a home buying perspective in Kokomo? Because I keep hearing that they're just ripping.
Yeah, I think that there's so much opportunity because again, they've got more jobs available now than they have people. But for years, since the economic crisis in 2008, we've seen less and less builders building new stock of available residential housing. So we see there's more jobs and there's more people, but there's not enough housing to be able to support it. So I think we're going to see a whole lot of growth in subdivision development, in multifamily housing, that kind of stuff in Kokomo to support the businesses that have chosen to go there. And the expansion of that battery plant's been huge. So I think I see a whole lot going on there. I think that anything along both of these corridors is ripe for expansion and growth. So coming out of Indianapolis, either on 70, 74, 65, 69, heading south, I think we'll see a whole lot of growth and connection together. So,
And I was just looking up like the fastest 3 growing counties outside of Indianapolis, like the Indianapolis metro area, because they had Boone County and which just makes sense because the Lebanon development's going on. They had Hendricks County and they had Hancock County. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It was all around Indianapolis. But outside of those 3, this is ChatGPT's from the Indiana Business Research Center, was Rush County. So down in that corridor on the way to Cincinnati. White County, which is up by Monticello. And I don't know what's going on up there, but that makes sense. And then Clark County down on the river, which makes sense because I feel like now a lot of people want to come across the border and live on the Indiana side, even if they do work in Louisville on the Kentucky side.
And we find that commuting pattern very common because we have property tax caps in Indiana. So as a residential property owner, your property tax are capped at 1% of your assessment on your home. And that was a huge add and plus for home ownership in Indiana. And, you don't see that same kind of structure in Illinois, or you don't see that same kind of structure in Ohio.
So Kokomo's one. Is there another spot in Indiana where you guys are just selling a ton of homes that surprises you?
I think things ebb and flow throughout the year. It's really fun to watch because of the wide footprint. Real estate is always local, right? And that's why we lean on the knowledge of the agents in those particular areas to be able to do it. There'll be times where I'll see one month where Southwest Indiana is down, but Northeast Indiana is up, right? Or vice versa, or it's fairly flat in Central Indiana, but the southern half really takes off. So we see things ebb and flow on a monthly basis like that. If you talk about just overall growth, like long term, then you start to look at, well, where are the places that the people want to be. And I think that Central Indiana is big in that hub. But I think as you move towards the border, anything that has the presence of an hour to 2 hours drive space to 465 has always been hot and will continue to be hot. It's those other buckets where you're at the fringe ends of Indiana, where you're farther away from the central core, that I think we'll see giant growth. Fort Wayne has done fantastic in its growth over the last several years of trying to modify and add in these aspects of living in their community that make people excited. People get far more excited about a trail that runs through their backyard than they do another factory, right? That's the kind of thing that they want, but the factory is the necessary thing that makes them employable and keeps them employed. Well, so we see those areas that use it, and that's why I think that the Ready Grant program that the Governor Holcomb's administration helped move through the legislature is so big, and I can tell which communities use that Ready Grant money the best. Right? If you drive into downtown Columbus, it's pretty awesome. They've done some great things. They've also added housing support inside of there. I think downtown Columbus is neat. I think downtown Valparaiso is really cool. Madison, Indiana. These are just fun little downtowns, and I think that's where we're poised to see the most growth, are these smaller communities where people kind of want to be in that small community feel. They want amenities like they can get in big cities, and they want to be able to get to those big cities easily. And that's where our highway system and interstate system helps us out here. So I think where you could see really, really big jumps are in these small, historic downtown communities that are starting to really shine in giving great, living amenities.
Well, you talk about communities, and one thing about Tucker is you guys are an active member of the Indiana community, right? Whether it's sponsoring Little League teams, or I know at the 100-year anniversary, there's a really awesome story of you guys raising money for cancer research.
Yeah. So we always had a program called the Giving Circle, and the Giving Circle is a way that agents can contribute a portion of their commission on each sale or one-time donation into the Giving Circle program, and then we use the Giving Circle to distribute money to United Way, various community, local community outreach, and then we've also done big things with Peyton Manning's Children's Hospital. So during our 100-year celebration, we wanted to go at it with a big bang. We had an all-company, all-brand event at Lucas Oil Stadium. So we ate dinner, dancing, all that kind of stuff out on the field, which was super cool.
Oh, that's
it was
sick.
Super, super cool. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of that event and that evening is that we had Peyton Manning join us in attendance there. And at the time, we were able to give him a 6-figure check for Peyton Manning's Children's Hospital, and that came out of contribution from the company. And it's always been our purpose and our mission to give back to the communities that we're in. And that's been really, really important to us from a legacy standpoint for the entire time that the Tucker Company's been around. And it goes all the way from our leadership at the top down to the agents. Everyone wants, we live in the communities that we work in. And we want to be good stewards of that. The terms always pay our civic rent, right? We need to pay our civic rent at times to help make the communities better that we support.
The Tucker family has paid their civic rent specifically to the city of Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah.
As I know how legend goes, is the Pacers may not have been still the Indiana Pacers without the Tucker family. And I know there's an interesting story about how, I don't remember which Tucker it was, but saved the Indiana Pacers from leaving town.
There was a time when the Pacers, I think this was in the late 60s, early 70s, right, where they were still out at the fairgrounds, and that's where they were playing, and the facility wasn't up to par with what the rest of the NBA was. So there was talks of them leaving town, and we knew that was an integral part of the community here. So Jeff Jewett, I believe was his name at the time, started working on some projects to build downtown. The Hilton Hotel, which is right in downtown Indianapolis, was developed under guidance from the F.C.Tucker Company, and part of that was because we hadn't had a downtown development of a hotel for over 40 years. So part of that development and what is now Market Square Arena was all projects of the F.C.Tucker Company. So we looked at ways to be able to make the downtown more attractive, to help property values in that area. And part of that meant we became part owner of the Pacers, right? So the development of what is now Market Square Arena was done under the guidance of the Tucker Company, and at one point they were minority shareholders, actually, of the Pacers, in order to be able to escape them there, and also did a telethon in the 1970s, right, to be able to bring in more season ticket sales, and that's what kind of saved it. But they saw that as an important part of what made Indianapolis, and we wanted to make sure that we tied that in for the long term. There are times when we all need to look at what's inside of our community and what we can do to make it better, and this is what they saw at that time.
So this is on the Encyclopedia of Indianapolis, which I didn't even know was a website, but it is. The Encyclopedia of Indianapolis. In the early 1970s, F.C. Tucker played a role in keeping the Indiana Pacers in Indianapolis. The real estate firm developed the team's new home, Market Square Arena, and the surrounding area, which included the Gold Building. The city of Indianapolis paid for 1/3 of the arena's development and construction costs, and an investor group that included F.C. Tucker and the Indiana National Bank paid the remaining 2/3. And at one point in the Pacers' history, F.C. Tucker owned 30% ownership of the team.
Right. And it wasn't because we're in the basketball business, Nate.
Yeah.
We're in the real estate business.
You're in the community business.
But we're in the community business. That's a fantastic way to say it. And this was something we knew had to happen in the community. And we see this all over the state, right? So our agents that are in the Evansville area are actively promoting things that make Evansville better. Our agents that are in Bloomington are actively making Bloomington better. And that makes me really, really proud.
Well, you see, like, some of my biggest competitors on social media are real estate agents posting their hidden gems or lifestyle hacks to, like, living in whatever the community is. And I'm like, they're selling you. Like, I just do this out of the love of the game. And they're over here, like, they want you to move and love this community because it's like they want to sell you the house when you move to the community, right?
They do, but they also love it because they're in it. Yeah. Right. And I think that's why when we looked at franchising as our path forward for growth, it was because we knew the passion of the agents and the passion of the local owners that are in there could really drive what it is. And that's why we partner with them in the way that we do.
I love it. Well, we come down to the end of the show. I feel like I could talk to you like all day long and, get more hidden gems around Evansville. But we have come to the end. So the first one we have is our Younger Years segment. It's presented by our friends at Orr Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indiana, helping develop young business leaders across the state. It actually started here in Indianapolis, and they just opened their second chapter down in Evansville. So there's now Orr Fellows that are, I think the first 15 are starting this June down in Evansville and working with some local businesses down there. So if you end up brushing shoulders with the Orr Fellows down there, take good care of them.
All right.
Andy, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
Don't get in your own way. And sometimes we overthink changes that we're going to make in life. And so I think I would tell myself, don't be afraid to take risks, take chances, go out and do something today. Be active, right? So if you just keep thinking about things you want to do later in life, they'll never happen. But the best and most important thing to do is to go out and do it starting today.
Just do it. Talk to Tucker. Great
just
slogan.
Do it.
Just
Same
do
one.
it.
Hung around just as long.
Yeah, great slogans. Amazing. Tell me about the craziest home you've ever sold.
One of the most crazy ones that I ever did was this individual homeowner who had built a panic room in his basement, but that it was also a true vault. There was a full vault down in the basement. It was just like a smoker's lounge, and you could go into it, but it fully locked you in whenever you came into the room. So it was kind of neat what people do with it and what they're going to do. But I always wonder, hey, 30, 40 years from now, what will that room be, and what does the next homeowner want it to be with?
It's like you're taking a tour and you like walk into that and you're like, whoa.
Oh, I'm in a vault.
Like, what's going on here? Yeah, that's pretty great. And I can only imagine like who the real estate agent on I think I just saw Tony Stewart's mansion went up for sale. I think he's down by Columbus, or he's like a state. Not even it's a whole big thing. Compound. Yeah. It's crazy if you look at the listing.
I think if the thing to remember is that most buyers and most sellers, regardless of what category that they're in or price range that they happen to be in, they're all the same, right? They're all still just people. And so when you're interacting with them, it's really not that different. Sometimes priorities change a little bit from one way to the other, but they all have the same concerns and they all wonder about the exact same things. And the roof leak that can happen on that same multi-million-dollar house is the same roof leak that could happen on a $150,000 house.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all about the same.
You talk about like those compounds or whatever. That's the long-term goal. It's like, we're going to have the studio here in Indianapolis, but I want to like find a fun factory somewhere in the reaches of Indiana where it's just like you can record crazy fun videos and hang out. And, it's like $5 a square foot or whatever it is. And my hometown's Bourbon, Indiana, which is up by Plymouth or Warsaw. And I am like, we're perusing the market there to find like some type of building that we could just build into something crazy.
Nate, when it's time, you know who to call.
Yes.
You need to talk to Tucker.
There it is. Talk to Tucker. What's one thing that every first-time home buyer needs to know?
Partnering yourself up with somebody that you can trust is a fantastic way to go about it, and do it sooner rather than later. If you think you're going to buy a house and your first purchase is going to be in 3 to 5 years, start engaging with that real estate broker now and start to talk to him and ask questions. Hey, what does this mean? How do I do it? How do I go about saving safely for the time when we do it? And what are the things I should expect? In the same way as I talked earlier in the interview, and we said interview people, this is part of that same process. Make them aware that you're looking, but you're not necessarily actively looking now. And good agents will be able to guide you through that process. And I think that's the most important part, is find a guide that you're comfortable with. Ask your friends who they've worked with, get referrals, that kind of thing. But team up with somebody sooner than you think you should. And the reason I say that is so that they can help guide some of the other financial choices you make in life to help you reach your goal.
What is the biggest real estate red flag?
If you smell too much potpourri, it means that they're trying to cover up something, right? So I think use all your senses whenever you go into the house. So make sure you're looking at things, make sure you're listening for stuff, make sure you're smelling all those things that happen. I think those can give you telltale signs of what that house is like. But then also don't overthink it, right? So help the guide tell you whether or not the thing that you see as being a major problem can or cannot be rectified. So I would say that if you're looking for red flags, I think one of those is, obviously sloping floor. Good. But I think if it smells too good, they're trying to probably cover something up.
Yeah, no one puts that much stuff out there. They're trying to cover something up. All right. I love it. These are the same 3 questions I ask everyone who sits in the chair, all about the state of Indiana. Right. The first one, what's something the world needs to know about Indiana?
They need to know that we are more than the home of Larry Bird and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that we've got so much more to offer than just those 2 things.
And those 2 things are great, but there's more. There's more than corn and Larry Bird in Indiana.
Yeah.
That's great.
Second, fun fact, highest producing state for domesticated duck in the United States.
Yeah, Maple Leaf Farms,
Yes.
Northern Indiana. They sling ducks.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. So we're going to see if you have any more. You kind of revealed a few of them throughout the episode, but what is a hidden gem in Indiana?
I love Madison. I love downtown Madison. Is just such a fun.
How
cool
far away is that
little
from Evansville?
downtown. Probably 2 hours-ish. It's following the river, so it depends if you want to take the interstate or the curvy road on 66. So
what is that? They have like
they got a regatta every year that it's on my bucket list of things to do. I've never done it before, and as a Hoosier, I know that I need to. So I'm going to try to get with.
And it's not like when I think when people think regatta, they think like rowboats or sailboats. It's like these are like hydroplanes. Yeah, it's crazy. Look at some of the videos. I need to actually make it down to Madison for the regatta. It looks so cool. That's a great hidden gem, and they have a good live music scene down there, like right on their down Main Strip.
And another really great state park. Some really cool hotels.
Is that Clifty Falls?
Clifty Falls. But there's also a hotel that's been developed down there that has full floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooks the river. As you go into it, it's in an old factory that's been refurbished down there. So there's just some really cool stuff going on in Madison.
Madison, Indiana. We're coming. Okay, final question for you. You get to share the love with someone else. Who's a Hoosier that we need to keep on our radar? Someone who's doing big things.
I think if you look at the owners of A-Zip Pizza, have you ever heard of A-Zip Pizza?
Pizza backwards?
Yeah. So he's from my hometown of Evansville, home area of Southwest Indiana. He was at Purdue. He was an engineer as well, as far as I'm aware, and won a contest with the concept of A-Zip Pizza, which is effectively fast food pizza, right? You make it with all the toppings that you want. They run it through a conveyor belt. Within 2 minutes, it comes out the other side completely done. They've expanded to multiple locations, multiple places throughout the state. They're at Purdue, they're at IU, they're in Indianapolis now. I think he's really got a fantastic program. They're franchising some things out themselves now, and I think is a really fast moving business. So AZIP Pizza and those guys, I think they've hit the nail on the head, and I think that's one of those things that you could see become a national brand that started right here in the Hoosier State.
Yeah, and specifically Evansville, right? Their first location was down there. Love that. AZIP Pizza. Yeah, I mean, we need to go check it out for sure. Hey, Andy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about the history of Tucker and the over 100 years of history that you guys have. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing how you guys are thinking about partnering and merging with these other legacy brands in real estate throughout Indiana, and sharing a little bit about Southwestern Indiana. I feel like it's always fun to have an expert telling us all the cool stuff we need to check out there. New Harmony and Harmony State Park is on the list for sure. And I appreciate you and all the work and the impact that you're making within Indiana.
Thank you so much.
Central and Southern Indiana and beyond, right? You talk about $5 billion with the B of real estate transactions in a year. Like, that is a crazy amount of economic impact in our state. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you like what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all my gear recommendations at sweetwater.com. If you want a behind-the-scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.